A year had passed since the night she walked away from Daniel. 12 months that felt both heavy and freeing, like shedding old skin that had clung too tightly. New York was still the same, loud, restless, alive, but Amelia wasn't. She moved through the city with a steadier step now, her heart no longer chasing what it had lost, but curious about what could be. She had opened her own design studio, Heartline Creative, a small but growing brand known for its emotion-driven storytelling through art. Her series, The Pieces of Me, had been featured in magazines, and clients were now waiting for her instead of the other way around. She lived in the same apartment, but it looked different, brighter. The walls were painted in warm earth tones, sunlight filled every corner, and the air smelled of lavender and fresh paper. Healing, she had learned, wasn't a single moment. It was 1,000 tiny ones, quiet mornings, good friends, small joys, and choosing peace every day. One crisp autumn morning, she was invited to speak at a creative conference downtown, on a panel about art and emotion. She stood backstage, calm but nervous. This was her first time speaking publicly about her work, and part of her still feared the ghosts that came with the story. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage. Greeted by applause and bright lights, she began softly. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over, she said, her voice steady and sincere. I'd built my identity around someone who didn't see me clearly. And when that ended, I thought I'd lost everything. But it turns out, heartbreak doesn't destroy you, it uncovers you. It shows you who you are beneath the waiting, beneath the wanting. The audience was silent, listening. She continued, every piece of art I've created since came from that discovery that the most powerful love story we can ever live is the one we have with ourselves. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. And somewhere in that crowd, someone smiled a little differently. After the event, she lingered by the coffee table, chatting with other artists. That's when she met Ethan Cole. He wasn't the type who demanded attention, quiet, observant, with a gentle humor that softened his sharp features. He was a photographer from Portland, known for capturing candid moments of human connection. I loved your talk, he said, handing her a cup of coffee. You speak like you've lived every word. Amelia smiled. That's because I have, he grinned. Then maybe one day, you'll let me photograph that story. It was a simple exchange, but something in his tone made her heart pause. Not in the dizzy, breathless way Daniel once had, but in a steady, grounded way. They talked for hours about art, travel, purpose, and pain. There was no pretense, no guardedness, just two people meeting in truth. When they said goodbye, he handed her his card and said, if you're ever in Portland, I'll show you my favorite spot for sunsets. No promises, no expectations, just good light. Amelia laughed. That sounds perfect, and for the first time in a long time, it truly did. Months passed, and they stayed in touch, texts, late-night calls, exchanged photos of art and travel. He never pushed, never asked for more than she was ready to give. He was patient, consistent, kind, everything love had never been before. Eventually, she visited Portland. They walked through art galleries and quiet trails, his camera always nearby, capturing fleeting smiles and sunlight on her face. It wasn't romance at first. It was friendship, one built slowly and honestly. But one evening, as they stood watching the sky blush over the ocean, he turned to her and said softly, you know, some people photograph what they see. I photograph what I feel. And when I look at you, all I feel is peace. Her breath caught. For years, she'd been the woman who made a man feel alive. Now, she was the woman who made a man feel at home. Back in New York, she noticed how her heart no longer flinched when she heard Daniel's name or walked past their old places. The city that once reminded her of pain now felt like hers again. One evening, she received an email from Daniel. The subject line, I'm sorry. She hesitated before opening it. His message was short, an apology for everything, an acknowledgement that he had been cowardly, a wish for her happiness. She read it once, twice, and then deleted it. Not out of anger, but because closure no longer required his words. Her peace no longer depended on his guilt. A year later, she and Ethan began officially dating. It wasn't a whirlwind. It was a sunrise, gradual, warm, certain. He never asked her to be less, never made her feel like a secret. He celebrated her art, her independence, her quiet strength. And in loving him, Amelia discovered something she had never known before, love that doesn't demand pain to feel real. On their first anniversary, they returned to New York together. They visited Kowloon, the same spot where her old story began. But this time, she wasn't waiting for anyone. She was there with someone who saw her exactly as she was, no lies, no hiding. As they sat by the window, sunlight spilling across their table, Ethan reached for her hand. "You know," he said softly, "sometimes the right love just takes longer to find its way." She smiled, eyes bright. "I guess I had to lose the wrong one to recognize the right one." He squeezed her hand. "Then I'm glad you did." Outside, the city hummed alive, endless, forgiving. Amelia looked out at the street, remembering the girl she once was, the one who waited, who believed, who broke. She felt a quiet gratitude for her, because without that heartbreak, she would never have found this version of herself, strong, free, and finally whole. Love, she realized, hadn't betrayed her after all. It had simply led her home. 2 years later, Amelia released her first book, The Art of Letting Go. It became a bestseller, filled with essays and illustrations about love, loss, and rebirth. In the dedication, she wrote, "For the girl who waited 6 years, thank you for teaching the woman I am now that love should never be a cage, but the wings that set you free." And with that, she finally closed the chapter on Daniel, not with bitterness, but with peace. Because sometimes, the most beautiful endings aren't the ones that stay. They're the ones that teach us how to begin again. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow for more stories like this.